Boa noite, Brasil. A gente está aqui em mais um Heavy Culture Talk com uma lenda do heavy metal hard rock americano. É com muito prazer que a gente recebe Mr. Ron Keel.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Let's do this.
Hey. Christian, bem-vindo. A gente vai aproveitar o máximo aqui, que não é sempre que a gente está com uma personalidade desse calibre. Heavy Culture Talk. Se inscreva no canal, prestigia aí, tem um Pix, se você achar bacana o nosso trabalho, prestigia. Christian, abrindo os trabalhos, perguntar para o Ron, ele está em plena atividade aí, teve um período aí que todos os músicos sofreram, nós sofremos o período pandêmico. Como ele conseguiu aí manter o pique, como é que ele está se preparando aí para essa retomada dos festivais? Como é que está a vida do Ron Keel, seus projetos, por favor?
Okay, Jay is asking about your activities. You were in full activity also after COVID and things like that. And how is the things doing for you now? Like preparing new album, concerts, things like that?
Everything is great. And yes, I stay very busy. I always have. I love to work, and I love what I do. Singing, performing, writing songs, releasing albums, and getting on stage and sharing that music with the fans and the audiences. I have a new single that we've just released that we're very proud of and excited about called When This Is Over. You can find that on YouTube. You can find everything that I'm doing at ronkeel.com. And the new single has been very successful, and we're happy about the response from the fans worldwide that have embraced this new song. A lot of big shows. Of course, it's summertime, so we're busy on stage and some big festival events. A show here in the U.S. called Rocktember in a couple of weeks with Winger, Tom Kiefer from Cinderella, and a lot of our friends from the heavy metal culture. So it's going to be a great time, and I'm always enjoying staying very busy. I have a new record company, RFK Media, that I am heading up, and we have signed our first act, The Fifth, from Raleigh, North Carolina, featuring Roy Cathy from The Fifth from Cold Sweat. And we're just about to sign our next big, exciting artist. We'll announce that in the next couple of weeks.
And talking about the COVID, how it affected the band? It seems not to be affected the band actually, because you were, like, as we said, in full activity. But how was it for you?
COVID was for me. It and I hate to say this, but I was not as affected as most of the other artists. I was still able to perform. We did the Sturgis Rally. We did some big fairs and festivals. I have an online platform on the internet. It's at patreon.com/Ron Keel, which I built 4 years ago when my wife was going through cancer. And for that year, I couldn't tour anyway. That was the year I had to stay home and take care of her and be with her through surgery and chemotherapy and radiation treatments. And she's fine now. She's been cancer-free for 5 years. But that gave me an opportunity, thank you, to build this online platform so I can still do what I love to do and entertain people online with all types of exclusive content, all the songs, the videos, live streaming performances, interaction with the fans, kind of like we're doing right now. You get on the webcam and you interact with people however you can do it. I can't be there with you in person, but I can be there with you guys online for this interview. So it's the same principle. We keep people entertained and keep engaging them. And so the COVID pandemic did not, I mean, I was ready. We were already in lockdown 4 years ago when my wife was diagnosed with cancer. So it was a huge challenge to find that online platform and be able to entertain people. I'm in South Dakota, which is right in the center of the United States. And South Dakota, the state here in the U.S. where I live, never shut down. We still had the big bike rallies and the bike events where Ron Keel Band performs often. So we were able to do a lot of shows. In fact, I did the Monsters of Rock cruise in 2020. I did my first ever Australian tour in 2020, just before the pandemic hit. We did those big events. So we were able to go to Australia, come home, release a new album, and work online, and continue to do those Ron Keel band shows at all the big biker events.
Great to hear that, because we can say that you were ahead of the other bands, because most of the bands were not able to deal with the situation, not even with the internet. They were not able to shot videos and things like that, or use a live platform to perform videos. So that was pretty interesting. As you said, you were ahead. And this is great too, because it's a way not to be affected that much, because the other bands, they were not used to that. They were kind of refusing to use the internet, actually, because they prefer to play live or something like that. And it's good to hear that it didn't affect you anyways.
Well, you have to find a way. I have to do what I do. I would go crazy. I have to sing, perform, write, create, entertain people. And the internet gave me that opportunity, and we're still going strong now, 4 years into the Patreon platform. We did a live stream broadcast worldwide, which is available on my Patreon. We had 12,000 people live viewing the show. So that was a great response. And that show is still available for fans to stream online. And we continue to try and find new ways to use the internet to reach people around the world.
Okay. Jorge?
When Is Over é um single muito bacana. Pessoal, procurem aí. Foi lançado, está nas principais plataformas de streaming. Eu queria perguntar para o Ron como é que ele divide um pouco, né? Ele tem a banda solo dele e de vez em quando, enfim, o nome Keel é um nome muito forte. Tentar simplificar para ti, Christian. Né? Foi um nome muito marcante aí na cena do hard rock e heavy metal dos anos 80. E a partir dos anos 2000, né, o Ron vem aí, teve uma volta da formação original em 2010. Como é que ele trabalha com essa presença marcante da banda Keel, e como é que ele consegue dividir essa questão? Tem muitos fãs da banda Keel, e como é que ele consegue aí de certa forma trabalhar com a carreira solo dele e com a banda?
Okay. Jay is asking, how do you deal with your solo career and Keel? Because the band has a huge name in the heavy metal hard rock scene, and you have your name too as a solo musician. Just how is it to deal with the situation, to share different kind of bands? How is it for you? How do you deal with this?
Well, Ron Keel and Ron Keel Band, that's my business. That's my brand. That's what I do. It's what I love. It's a brotherhood. It is 365 days a year active band. Keel is a family that every couple of years, maybe we get back together and do a show. I mean, that is another brotherhood. It's like having two families. Yeah. But Keel is not a business. Keel doesn't have a website or a social media or a tour or an album or any of that. Keel is just it's a family. It's a brotherhood. Every couple of years, if the opportunity is right, we'll get back together and celebrate our friendship, our love for each other, our music, the fans, and our history. But Ron Keel Band does all those same songs as well during our show, where you're going to hear The Right to Rock, Tears of Fire, Rock and Roll Outlaw, Somebody's Waiting, Because the Night. All of those songs are going to be included in every show that I do. The difference is with Ron Keel Band, we play our own original music, songs from throughout my career, from Steeler to Keel to Ron Keel Band. Keel only does Keel songs, and very, very seldom do we get the chance to do that. But I love those guys, and I love what we accomplished. I am always looking forward, looking ahead, and Keel is not in a position of being a real full-time band. And so I have to be in a band. I have to be in a situation where I can work with my guys every day and continue writing, creating, doing shows, making records, and releasing songs like When This Is Over.
Great to hear that. Vai, Jorge.
Ele falou no Steeler, né? O Steeler tem um álbum classicaço aí, e tem o Malmsteen na guitarra lá no início dos anos 80, 83, se não falha a memória. Já que ele falou no Steeler, eu vou perguntar, né? quais as lembranças que ele guarda desse tempo do Steeler. O Steeler é muito popular no Brasil, muita gente conhece o Steeler por aqui, fala isso pro Ron. E como é que ele... são boas lembranças, eu falo isso porque a gente já conversou aqui com o Graham Bonnet, fala para ele também que o Graham Bonnet esteve aqui conosco e não falou muita coisa bacana sobre os tempos de Malmsteen, tá? É uma curiosidade de fã aí, tá?
Sim. Jay is asking about the time you had Steeler. How was it? You have good remembrance for that? How was it to play with?
I recognized a couple of words in that question. I heard the Malmsteen word.
Yeah, sorry. How was it to play with Inge Malmsteen? Like,
that Steeler is a fantastic memory. To be a part of that magical LA Hollywood metal scene. We moved there in 1981, just as it was really heating up. And to be right in the middle of that scene, we were from outside. We moved from Nashville, Tennessee to Hollywood. So we were the outsiders. We were the outcasts. We had to really fight for every opportunity. And we clawed our way up through that scene. And we were on a level with Rat and Motley Crue and Quiet Riot and Great White and all those bands that were such an important part of that rock and metal history that was that scene in Hollywood in the 80s. I learned a lot. It was the album that we did, that Steeler album, produced by Mike Varney, released in September of 1983. At one point was the biggest selling independent heavy metal record of all time. And it really put me on the map, really gave my career a huge boost, and also put guitarist Yngwie Malmsteen on the map. It was his first album, and it was my first album. And we both continued to build on that success. And Steeler is still semi-active as well. We are recording a new Steeler track for my next album, Keel World, with Rick Fox, the bass player from Steeler, Mitch Perry on lead guitar, who replaced Yngwie Malmsteen in '83. Mitch has been a part of the Keel and Steeler family since 1983. And we did a show together in 2019 called Keel Fest in Columbus, Ohio, where it was Ron Keel Band, Steeler, and Keel all on the same bill. One night, the show was over 3 hours long without any breaks, no stop, no intermission. I sang 40 songs that night. We did the whole Ron Keel Band show, the Steeler show, and the Keel show all in one night. And that band is still, we still have some unfinished business. So we're recording a new track for my new album, Keel World, which will feature brand new songs, not old rehash recordings or missing stuff from the vaults or the archives. These are all new songs from Keel, Steeler, Ron Keel Band, Fair Game, Iron Horse, my solo career, and more, all on one brand new album with all new songs. So we're really excited about that.
Oh, that would be great. Jay was talking one thing, I don't know if you know, but Steeler is and very famous here in Brazil. Even in the beginning, in the 80s and the 90s, the band had lots of attention here in Brazil. And then after that, also new because of you, obviously. And it's like there are great remembrances from the band. That's why we asked the question, because I think Steeler was like the main door for you to enter in Brazil too. It's like
absolutely. That was the first time that people heard my voice or heard my songs or heard of me, and it was a huge opportunity for us to establish that album itself has a very special place in hard rock and metal history. It's one of the foundation cornerstones of that era and that genre, and I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, for sure. Jorge?
Dúvida, porque o Graham Bonnet falou que quebrou o pau com o Malmsteen. O Ron também quebrou o pau com o Malmsteen ou não?
Okay, Jay is asking about a controversial issue. We had the opportunity to talk to Graham Bonnet, and he said that he had like lots of fights with I am getting
Yngwie Malmsteen.
Yeah, I'm getting fucking dumb, man.
I have spoken to Graham Graham Bonnet's been on my radio show several
Yeah.
times as well. And, uh, you know, I know that they had some very tense times. When I was playing with Yngwie, there was no fights or arguments. It was my band. I was the leader of the band. I gave him that opportunity. And he's obviously one of the greatest guitar players of all time, but we didn't work together. You know, maybe we were too young. Maybe I was not able to combine those two talents. I look
Yeah.
at it very much like David Lee Roth and Edward Van Halen. David was the rock star, and Edward was the musician.
Yeah.
With Steeler, it was very much the same way. Yngwie was the musician, and I was the rock star, and we could not find a way to collaborate. We couldn't combine my American metal roots with his neoclassical vision. And so it didn't last very long. 9 shows, 4 months in 1983. By the time the album came out, Yngwie was gone. So he went on in fairness, he left my band to join a signed act on a major label with one of his favorite singers, Graham Bonnet. So even if we had been working together and tight and thick as thieves, he would have still left the band for an opportunity like that, and I would have given him my blessing like I did. It was a great opportunity for him to join Alcatraz with Graham Bonnet and continue his career, and he's followed that vision ever since, and he's still doing very well. I'm happy for him.
Yeah, great to hear that. Jorge?
Falar pouco agora do Keel, né? O Keel tem excelentes trabalhos marcantes dos anos 80, Lay Down the Law, The Right to Rock, The Final Frontier, vários trabalhos que dataram um período bastante forte da cena hard rock de heavy metal, né? Como é que ele enxerga hoje o cenário, né? Fazendo um comparativo do cenário hoje com aquele cenário dos tempos do Keel, e qual é o disco preferido dele, do Keel?
Mm-hmm. Jay is asking about the scenery nowadays. How do you see the scenery nowadays, so the hard hat scenery, and how do you see it when you begin? Because, well, you were one of the main influences of the new bands and things like that. How do you see this?
There was a lot of great music created back then. Some amazing musicians. The guitar was being reinvented at the time by Edward Van Halen and Randy Rhoads and Jake E. Lee and George Lynch and so many amazing musicians, and not just guitarists, but a lot of other great musicians as well. And I still hear that. There's a lot of great music still coming out. I know it's more difficult for younger, new bands now. They're not making the kind of money that we used to make back in the day. The opportunities are more difficult. But I'm still on my radio show, Streets of Rock and Roll. Every week we focus predominantly, mainly on new music, from even if it's bands from back in the day, the Scorpions and Skid Row and so forth, still creating great new music, or new up and coming bands that are just trying to get a break. They can all be heard on my radio show. That was a very magical time for hard rock and metal. And metal in general, it's changed. In the biggest change I see is the different categories or subgenre. You have power metal and death metal and this metal and that metal. Back when I was getting started, metal was
Metal.
pretty much, it was anything with a metallic guitar. If it's got if it's got a metallic guitar sound, that was metal. Starting with Born to Be Wild by Steppenwolf, and then Black Sabbath, and Whole Lotta Love, and Deep Purple, Highway Star. And, for us, that was metal. As we got into the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, we considered bands like Saxon, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Def Leppard. For us, that was all metal. And then some bands like Bon Jovi or Poison, would have a radio or a hit commercial type of sound where it was more friendly for the radio. But there's some things, a lot of things have changed. But this metal, this heavy culture is in our hearts. It's the music of the wild and the young, and it will always resonate because those who love it listen to it, play it, and share it like us. It's in our hearts. We are young in our heads. I'm still 17 years old here. I mean, the body might age, but this is still 17, man. I'm the same kid that used to want to rock out and fight my way to the front row at a concert and put my fists in the air and sing along. And that's what good hard rock is all about.
And what is your favorite new album? You have to choose one. You said, like, this is the most important album.
New album.
Oh, that's a great question.
Always.
Sempre é, né?
Right now, my favorite new album, gosh, I think, and this is not new, it's a couple of years old, but Ronnie Atkins from Pretty Maids released an album called One Shot. I think it was last year. He's got a new solo album out now, which is great. But that album, One Shot, I thought was fantastic. A lot of the stuff that Frontiers Records is doing. But I really love this band, The Fifth. You have to check them out at thefifthmusic.com. Shake Little Sister. Check out that video on YouTube. Shake Little Sister from The Fifth. It's new, it's fresh, and it's exciting, but it still has the spirit of that classic 80s rock and roll vibe. I'm really excited to have that band on our label, RFK Media, and releasing a full album from them next year.
And if you have to choose one of yours, like which album would be your favorite that you composed?
It would be the Metal Cowboy album from 2014. That's the one record that is truly me. It combines my metal heart with my cowboy attitude and really puts both styles together. It's heavy, it's exciting. I really love the songs. I'm very proud of that record. It's the only album in my entire catalog that I wrote all the songs. So it's a very personal album for me, and it is my favorite. It's still in the CD player in my truck. I listen to it all the time. And I make music for myself. You know, that it may sound egotistical, but really, I think I have to please myself because I'm never going to please everybody. You're never going to get everybody to agree that this is great. I mean, if you sell 3 million records, that means billions of people don't like you or don't want what you do. So you can't please everyone. You have to please yourself and make music that you're proud of, that you love, and then you share it with the world and let them react however they will. It's up to the listener and the audience what they think and feel when they hear my music. But I'm very proud of that Metal Cowboy album. The Ron Keel Band album, Fight Like a Band, which is being reissued now on my label, RFK Media, is another very, very special record for me. We wrote that album when, as I said earlier, my wife was diagnosed with cancer. And I had to tell the band, we can't tour this year. This is 2017, long before the pandemic. I told the band that we can't tour this year. I can't leave. I've got to stay home with my wife. And I was worried that they would all, because they're fantastic musicians and very talented guys. I was worried that I would lose them, that maybe the band wouldn't be able to stay together. And they all had my back. They all just said, we're with you. We're going to get a case of beer and a bottle of whiskey and bring our guitars to your house. And they came to my house where I am right now, and we wrote that album together. So even though Metal Cowboy is very personal and I wrote all those songs, Fight Like a Band was a true team effort with the Ron Keel Band and all those guys. Instead of being on tour, we just sat in the basement here and we wrote a very special batch of songs, which I'm extremely proud of.
Yeah, I'm talking about being an egotistical. I have to say that you're completely sure about this, because first you have to please yourself when you are composing some songs, Like most of the bands nowadays seems not to be satisfied with the songs that they are playing. It seems like, they are playing to get some money and not to be like satisfied with their own songs, Like one of the bands that I could say that's for sure is Metallica.
Yeah.
If you compare Metallica in the beginning, they are composing music they like. They really enjoy that. And after that, when it became like a money industry, I don't think they feel like composing music for themselves. I feel like more they are selling music, and it's very important what you said about pleasing yourself. Like you have to feel like pleased when you compose something. You have to say like, oh, this is good. I have to show it to the world. I have to show it to the people. Something like that. It's okay. I think the dumbasses will gonna like it.
I agree, and I agree. I do have to please myself, and I write and create all the time. But when it comes to selling and marketing your music and putting it out there and releasing it and selling it, there are songs that I've written that I love, that I'm really happy with, but it's not what the people might want to hear. So there are songs that I've written for myself that I love that I haven't released because it's not it is a business after all. And if you don't make a living at your job, you're going to have to find a new job. And I don't want a new job. I like the job I've got. So I do want to make money and make a living. And I do try and but you find that common denominator. Those songs like When This Is Over. That song is so special and so important to me that I didn't want to wait for the new album. That song will be on the new album coming out next year. But I really felt the message was really important. I felt very strongly about this song, and I wanted to release it immediately. We wrote the song and went in the studio and recorded it immediately, did the video, and got it out there as soon as possible because it was something that I really did want to share. I want everybody, hey, listen to this. I believe in this. I love it. I think it's important. I want to share it with people. Some songs, you love them, and they're important to you, but maybe it's not appropriate to share them with everybody else.
Great. Jorge?
Ron falou das influências country ou southern.
Sim.
Southern. Em 2020 o Ron Keel Band lançou um disco, de covers de muitas bandas que eu gosto muito: Allman Brothers Band, Lynyrd Skynyrd, Blackfoot, Molly Hatchet. Como é que foi a seleção dessas músicas? Foram versões até, quero parabenizar, assim, ficou muito bacana. E como é que foi 2020, pessoal? Se liga aí, busca esse álbum aí. Como é que foi a seleção e se essas são as principais influências dele, as influências atuais dele.
Okay, Jay is asking about the album of covers that you have, like about the selection of the covers that you decided to put there, if they're main influences or bands that you really enjoy, like how was it to choose the bands that you would cover in this album?
On South by South Dakota. That was our pandemic album. It came out in April of 2020. And it was an absolute accident. When we went into the studio to record Fight Like a Band, when you go in the studio with my guys, we were all recording together. We're not sending internet files. We record together as often as possible. On that session, we were all in the same room. And I knew the schedule for the day. I'm going to start with whatever song it's going to be the first song that we record, but I don't want to play that song over and over again while we get a headphone mix or while we get the tones dialed in or while everybody warms up. I believe in capturing that first take. So once we got set up, everybody's getting their headphone mix and we're dialing in the guitars and the drums. And I wanted to play something to check the mix. So we launched into Flirting with Disaster by Molly Hatchet. We start playing Flirting with Disaster. And we're playing it and everybody's getting adjusted and got a feel for it. And I thought, well, that's cool. Okay, now we can record what we came here to record today. We went on with the original music. And did the same thing at the end of the day. After we're all done with the day's work, we just jammed on, I think it was Rockin' Into the Night by 38 Special. And we just, after the day is done, let's just jam. Played a cover song. And we did this every day. We'd do a song in the morning to warm up and get our vibe going. And then at the end of the day, we'd have a couple of beers and do another song. So by the third or fourth day of the session, my co-producer, engineer said, I've been recording that stuff. I didn't even know we were recording. And I said, well, let me hear it. Let's listen back to it. And he played it back for me. And I thought it was so special, so organic. Just five guys in a room playing music that they love, didn't even know we were recording, just playing for the song and playing for each other. I thought we had captured something very special there. So we had 5, maybe 6 songs. And then I realized this has got to be a Southern rock tribute record. We've got to add some songs to this. And we, of course, you have to do an Allman Brothers song. If you're going to do a Southern rock tribute album, you got to do Allman Brothers, right? And I had been doing Ramblin' Man in my acoustic show for years, but the band had never played it. It wasn't one of those songs that we had played on stage or worked up. I said, we got to do Ramblin' Man. Let's listen to it a couple of times, piped it through the headphones. And literally we listened to it a couple of times and did a live take right then and there, very natural, in the studio, a song that the band had never done before. We had to do a Lynyrd Skynyrd song. You got to have a Lynyrd Skynyrd song, right? And I chose not one of the well-known songs like Give Me 3 Steps or Sweet Home Alabama or Freebird. I chose Red, White, and Blue because we had been doing that song in our show. It was a song that we already knew, and we were comfortable with that song. We recorded that, and that became the signature video from that album, Red, White, and Blue. And so that's how the song process continued. Of choosing those songs. We already had 2 songs already recorded, Ghost Riders in the Sky and Homesick, which we included. We had a live recording from our very first gig ever of the Creedence Clearwater Revival medley. It's a live Creedence medley at the end of the album. That the cool thing is it's from our very first show ever. And it's a great live recording and a great way to close the album. So we represented all of our Southern rock influences. Train from Blackfoot, song that we've been doing in the show from day one, and that was a no-brainer. Let's cut Train, and so it was a very organic, easy process. I'm very proud of that album, and but it was a covers album. We followed that up earlier this year with another covers EP called Keeled, which is Ron Keel band playing all the Keel songs, Because the Night, The Right to Rock, and so forth. So when this is over, the new single is really our first new original music in 3 years. So once again, we're really proud of the cover songs. And, a lot of people don't understand, at least I don't agree with the common conception of covers versus originals.
Yeah.
To me, they're all originals because somebody wrote them. Whether it doesn't matter who wrote them, they're all originals to somebody. And once you write a song and you put it on an album and you go on tour, you're covering that song every night. Even though it's your song, you're still covering the song in your show every night. So to me, there's really no difference between originals and covers. I do love the thrill of creating and writing songs and sharing music from the heart, like this new single, but I love singing and playing all music. Whatever the audience wants to hear, we're going to play it for them.
Yeah, I would say that it's impossible to escape from a cover, because when you begin playing, the first thing you're going to play is some music that you enjoy, It's like sometimes you like to enjoy the song, playing the song. Sometimes when you learn to play the song, you discover that the song is a piece of shit to play because it's very difficult. You get it's better to listen than to play this. And some of the songs that you don't like much, when you start playing, you see like, oh, it's nice to play this. This is like most people who didn't play any instrument maybe don't realize kind of the importance of a cover, if for like the listener or even for the band. I like to listen bands covering their origins. It's like, it's good, And sometimes when the band is like in the first album and things like that, you have the origins there, because the band has to grow up to have their own identity. It's pretty difficult for the band to start with their own identity in the first album. Well, it happened to you because in that time, there was nothing similar. But after that, the end of the 80s, the beginning of the 90s, it was difficult to have something new. The band seemed like a cover band, like they have their originality, but they were attached to their roots,
Yeah.
And, in your time, most of the bands, they have their roots, but it was really difficult to find the roots. I think it's important, like, but people don't believe, like, oh no, I started to listen to them. No, it doesn't make any sense. Yes.
Yeah. Well, a good song is a good song. Doesn't matter where it came from or who wrote it. And uh, nowadays it has become more difficult just because so much great music has been released the last
Yeah.
40 years. I mean, every riff that you come up with, you can compare it to something else. It's very difficult to come up with something new and original and different because I'm a simple guy. I like that
Yeah.
simple, straight ahead, AC/DC or Saxon or whatever. I mean, I like that straight ahead rock and roll. And coming up with new original riffs is very difficult, and coming up with lyrics that can tell a story or say something important that hasn't already been said, or say it in a new way. I think that's always going to be the challenge. And I would rather write one really good new song than 10 shitty songs or 10 half songs. It's got to be great. I've set the bar pretty high in my life and my career with some songs that are very special to me, like The Right to Rock, Wild
Yeah.
Forever, When This Is Over. So it becomes more and more difficult to create a new, unique, original song that you're going to love enough to record it and release it. That's always a challenge, but I think we've got 14 or 15 new songs for this Keel World album.
Well.
Because with the different identities of my bands, a Steelers song has to sound a certain way. It's
Yeah.
got to have the shredding guitar. It's got to have that early 80s vibe. Whereas the Ron Keel band, we do all types of music. We write songs that we call are Keelish. It could be a Keel song, or it
Yeah.
could be, a Ronnie Lee Keel country song. There's a lot of diversity in Ron Keel band. I know what a Keel song sounds like. We've got 2 new Keel songs on this coming album, and you can hear
Yeah.
from the first time you listen to it, that's Keel. Ron Keel band isn't so easy to define because we are very diverse, but
Yeah.
and finding which songs that I'm writing fit which artist. Which song is the Keel song, or the Steelers song, or the Ron Keel band song, or the Iron Horse song? That's part of the fun of creating this new Keel World album.
For sure. I have one question to ask you about the 90s. Like, the 90s was like, I think the main thing for the hard have culture. Like every band was on the top. Motley Crue, the Poison, lots of bands were like very famous that time. But then we have the problem with the grunge. Like lots of bands were affected in USA, like other styles like thrash metal, death metal, and heavy metal started to be like affected by that. Some bands had to change because of the labels demanding that they sounded a little bit more like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and this kind of things. Like, did it didn't affect you that time, but how did you see that? Because it was a real pain that time.
Well, it did affect me because in 1991, maybe right around 91, there were no more record deal, no more tours. I had a family, a nice beach house in Santa Monica, California, the sports cars, all that, and I lost it all because there was everything stopped. I was done. I found sanctuary in country music because once you lose everything and you're
Yeah.
just left with your guitar and your stories, I started writing songs that sounded like country music, and it saved me. Through the 90s, I became a very successful country artist. I toured the world as a country artist and released 2 albums, one solo album and one with a band called the Rattlers out of Nashville. We toured Europe. We toured the States. I played all the roadhouses and honky tonks and rodeos and all that shit. And I had about 75 songs that were placed in television and movies, which was really good money. Frankly, it was really good money. Kept me alive, kept my family alive through that whole time in the 90s. I still ended up doing, in 1997, my heaviest album ever with a band from Japan called Saber Tiger. Akihito Kinoshita, big guitar hero in Japan, brought me over there to sing on the most metal album I've ever done. This is a very heavy record and a very loud, hard, screaming vocals. So even during my country period, I was still screaming my guts out and belting out some really good metal in the 90s.
Yeah, great to hear that because it was like I think the most terrible time for the bands there. Like I remember that Sanctuary became I forgot the name of the band now. Shit, I'm completely dumb. Ô Jorge, qual a banda que o cara do Santuário mandou mas depois do Santuário foi o
Nevermore?
Nevermore. I remember that Sanctuary became Nevermore just because they wanted the Sanctuary to sound like grungy. And lots of bands had affected like that. So it's like, I think it's better to go back to the roots.
Yeah, I'd rather sing country music than grunge any day. I was never a fan of the grunge bands. I know that that was music is in cycles. It's always changing, always growing, evolving, developing. And I get that. It was different in the 60s when I grew up listening to the Beatles and the Stones and the Who. And it's the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. It's always changing. And some of that music will stay alive. And I think that heavy metal and hard rock, country music is the same way. Country music's been around for 100 years. It's not going anywhere because it's real. It's from the heart. It tells a story. It makes you feel something. Grunge was just angry at everybody, and and then there's a reason a lot of those guys are dead now. But I don't want to get into that. But I mean, our music was we want to live, man. We want to live. We want to rock. We don't want to. Life is good. Music is good. Life is good. Screw that anger and all that other bullshit. We want to have a good time.
Yeah, it was like, thanks God, it was like a sensation, an overnight sensation, and then after that, like, okay, nobody wants that anymore.
Christian, a gente já tá com um pouco do tempo estourado. Eu tenho uma dúvida de fã agora, né? Ele deve ter respondido essa questão aí milhões de vezes, aliás. Como foi a audição para o Black Sabbath, 1984?
Jay is asking about your audition to Black Sabbath. How was it?
I know exactly what Jay is asking. He's talking about Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
And for me, guys, it's such a huge thrill for me to have, two of my all-time favorite bands, Kiss and Black Sabbath, and to be a very, very small thread in the history of both, because I've worked with Gene Simmons from Kiss. Gene produced 2 of my albums. Today's his birthday. Happy birthday, Gene. He was a huge mentor and friend to me. And to get the gig in Black Sabbath was not an audition. I got the job. I was a member of Black Sabbath for a very short time. But the truth is, they never called me to say, you're fired. So technically, I'm still a member of Black Sabbath. Right? It was an amazing experience getting to know Tony Iommi and Geezer Butler, my heroes, and to hang out with them and to talk about the future. And we were working on building something, but it didn't work out. Still, to be a part of that, I was lucky enough to be included in an album a couple of years ago called Emerald Sabbath, which is all of the ex-Black Sabbath, not all of them, but a lot of ex-Black Sabbath or Ozzy members. Vinny Appice, Rudy Sarzo, Dave Walker, some of the Bev Bevan, who played drums with Sabbath. We all got together and did an album called Emerald Sabbath, and I got to sing 3 songs on that album. I got to cover an Ozzy song, Hole in the Sky. I got to cover the Ian Gillan song, Trashed.
Whoa!
And I got to cover a Dio song, Die Young. All 3 of those are on YouTube. If you want to go, just Ron Keel, Black Sabbath, or Emerald Sabbath, you can find all those tracks. I'm very proud that I got to cover all 3 singers, and Ronnie James Dio was a dear friend of mine, to go in the studio and kind of feel Ronnie James Dio's presence, like he was there with me. And it was a big challenge to try and cover those songs. So I finally did get to sing some of my all-time favorite Sabbath songs with some Sabbath guys. I mean, Vinny Appice on the drums for Die Young. I mean, he played on the original album. It doesn't get any better than that. So to be a small part of that history, I didn't talk about it in interviews for the longest time. I didn't say anything because I didn't do an album or a tour with them, but it started coming out in the books. People were writing books about the history of Black Sabbath, and the website all of a sudden was mentioning me. And so everybody else was talking about it. I get asked about it in every interview. So it's something that if I'm going to have to talk about it, I want to sing about it too.
Great.
E agora é para matar. Qual o preferido vocalista do Sabbath pro Ron? Ozzy, Dio or Tony Martin?
Okay, to finish, Jay wants to know what is your favorite Sabbath singer?
Oh, that's really tough, man. I admire and enjoy all of their releases, and of course, I will always have a special place in my heart for Ronnie James Dio. But I think that's an impossible question, because the the classic Ozzy Sabbath was so iconic and so important to my generation. They really created heavy metal. I mean, they really were the first iconic metal band. And Ozzy's voice, really, his character on stage, his voice, and his presence, everything about Ozzy made that band happen. Of course, there's the Dio era, and even going on to Heaven and Hell, when they did, they renamed the band Heaven and Hell and did the Dio classics. My favorite singer obviously has to be Ronnie James Dio. But that's not taking anything away from the legacy that they created with Ozzy before and after Ronnie James Dio as well.
Yeah, for sure. Jorge, encerrar?
Vamos encerrar. Agradece o Ron, fantástico. Senão a gente fica aqui, tem história para contar 10 horas. Incrível, incrível, incrível. Agradece para nós, Christian, uma honra. Fala para ele que a gente está emocionado aqui.
Sim.
Agradece, por gentileza.
Ron, thank you very much for giving the opportunity to talk to you. Okay, we're very honored. Okay, it was a great experience. Harry, we are very happy to know that you are successful and that your life is doing well too. And I would like you to leave a message. Sorry. Dumbass. I would like you to leave a message to the Brazilian fans here. Okay.
Well, thank you for having me. This has been a great discussion, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing. I love the heavy culture and what you guys are all about. I'm honored to be a part of it and to have this opportunity with you. To our fans in Brazil, I know that there are a lot of Keelaholics in Brazil.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I have to believe that someday, somehow, I'm going to come there and perform for you on tour.
That would be great, for sure.
It's on my bucket list. I do have a very dear friend in Brazil, Carlos Chiaroni at Animal Records in Brazil.
Oh, yeah.
You know Carlos, guys? I'm sure you do. And he is one of my best friends, my brother in blood, and a very strong supporter of what we do. And if there's any way that we can bring my band to your country, I'm going to make it happen. I'll keep trying to do that. Until then, until I can get there in person, please find me at ronkeel.com.
For sure.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
My pleasure,
Thank you very much, Ron.
You got it.
Yeah.
Metal!
Yeah.
Metal. Encerramos aqui em êxtase com a lenda Ron Keel. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, guys.
Galera, acompanhe a agenda.
Bye-bye.
Subscribe the channel. Vejo vocês por aí. Obrigado, Christian. Thank you, Ron.
Hello.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.